Good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar today. We've got quite an exciting, nail-biting, on the edge of your seat event for you today, where we're going to try and set a theoretical, at least, world record for getting a contact center up and running in Microsoft Teams. Just so that you're aware, we will be recording the session today so that you can share it with your colleagues afterwards if you think they'll get benefit. And I'm joined today by some really exciting guests. So I've got someone you may have heard of before, Tom Arbuthnot from Empowering Cloud. And I'm also joined by one of our engineers, Renee. Before we let them say hello, let me just quickly give you a quick introduction. So I'm James, I'm Luware's VP Customer Success, and I'm going to make sure everything's running to time today and make sure it's all going well. So with that, I'll hand over to the guys to say hello. So Tom, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, James. Yeah, hey everybody. Yeah, thanks for joining. I'm excited about this one. So we were talking about this, what we could do on a webinar, and I suggested that we do a live install on my tenant, see if we could really do it against the clock. So yeah, hey everybody. Great, thanks for joining. I say Tom Arbuthnot, Empowering Cloud, but I don't want to take up too much time on the intro, so I'll hand over to Renee.
All right. Hi. Hello. I'm Renee. I'm a customer success engineer at Luware, and that means my job is basically on guiding our customers through the onboarding stages, assisting them with the configuration of the product and any technical assistance that may be required. And I'll be leading this installation today, so let's hope that I'll be fast about it. Otherwise, you'll all be stuck here with my horrible German accent.
So Renee's doing all the heavy lifting here. It's James and I just get to chat, basically.
Yeah, sounds good to me, Tom. So thanks for the introduction, guys. For the benefit of everybody in the call, a quick overview of what we're actually going to attempt to do today. So we're going to flow through what would be a normal, very typical installation for one of our customers who've never used Nimbus before. Today, Tom's playing the part of the customer. So we're actually installing in his tenant, which has never had Nimbus installed before. So it'll be a real fresh start. A couple of things that he does have in place beforehand, just so you understand where we're starting from. So it is licensed for Teams phone system. It has some Microsoft calling plan licenses and a number ready. And Renee today will have direct access to Tom's tenant, so he'll be executing all the steps that you see. And we're going to be counting down the timer. So you'll see exactly how long you can go from a standing start all the way up to handling your first call with Nimbus in Teams. You can see on the screen there the process that we're going to be going through. And as I said, this is the same as every other customer installation. So we're going to go through all of these steps today and hopefully break some theoretical world records. With that and the pressure piled on, Renee, if you want to get your screen shared.
All right, let's get this started. So screen share should be starting now. All right, I'm looking at our stopwatch here. I'm going to leave this open in this tab here, and it will count the time up in the title as well. So let's jump right in, start the clock, and then we start off at the Teams admin center. I'm logged in as a global admin user here right now, and we're going to first go over to Teams apps, manage apps, where we will upload our custom app manifest. This is a zip file for our Nimbus application. Just going to quickly upload this here, get the confirmation your app has been added. You can click this link to review it. Okay, so this is now available in our Teams tenant and can be used going forward. All right. So next step, we need to grant some permissions to our applications. This can be done by executing a specific permission link that we will execute using our global admin account here. It will ask us to confirm the permissions that are required by our application. And we're going to accept this here.
So I guess normally I, as the customer, will be clicking these buttons. Obviously, I've given you an account to share on a single screen for the webinar, but you would ask me as a global admin to click that button, basically.
Exactly, or just I can provide the consent link to you as a global admin, and you can then get back to me once that's done.
Yeah.
All right. So next step then, over to the actual Teams client. We will need to create a new team here, which we will then be enabled for our Nimbus service. We're going to create a new one from scratch. I'm going to set it to private so that I am in control over who gets to be a team owner and who gets to be a team member, because that will be important for our Nimbus service as well. I'm going to name this one Nimbus Demo, going to create it. Nice work. Thank you. All right. I've got the option here of adding a few more members. My own account will, of course, be added here automatically as a team owner. And that will also mean that on the Nimbus side, once I have created the Nimbus service for this, I will become a service owner with full control over the service configuration. I can now add a few more members here who will be participants and will be able to receive calls as well, but will not be able to make any changes. So let's add Tom here as a member.
Agents, effectively, wouldn't they, I guess?
Yes. The team owners are also members here in this group, but they also get the option of configuring the service. All right, so we've got this one. The next one is that we need to add the Nimbus application as a new tab. So we're going to search for Nimbus. There it is, the app that we just added here in the Teams Admin Center before. Going to click Add. Need to sign in. And again, we get asked for a few permissions. This will be a one-time event here for my user account.
Just for those watching on screen, you often can't see the pop-ups for the login because they're administrative prompts, just so you're aware.
And this is signing into your service now, effectively, but with a Microsoft account. Is that right?
Yes, on behalf of the user using our Nimbus applications. So thank you for choosing Nimbus. Here we are. We need to accept the license terms, and we still have the option here of fine-tuning the service name. It's based on the team name that we've defined, but we could name it anything else. Same for the service UPN. This one will be assigned to the resource account that each Nimbus service requires in the background for Microsoft Teams to be able to accept the call via this resource account and forward it on to our Nimbus call handling application. Gonna confirm this here, clicking Save. And then we're almost done, as it says, just a few more things to do. So let's go to the settings page. This was basically a reflection of what will be configured on the Microsoft Teams side. Right now, this is only a service that has been registered on our Nimbus database side. It doesn't actually exist yet on the Teams side. This is why we still get these warning messages here, because we still need to run our PowerShell-based provisioning script to make sure that the resource account gets created with correct settings. We can still fine-tune these here, but for now, I'm just gonna say we want to switch PSTN to active because we want this service to be reachable via an external phone number. And for this one, we're gonna choose a calling plan number. So back to the Teams Admin Center. Let's go to voice.
I've already pre-ordered some calling plan numbers, so I have some ready to go that are service numbers, or Microsoft call them voice app numbers now, don't they?
Let's take this one.
Whilst we're on the subject of numbers and attempting to slow Renee down a little bit there to make it harder, we do support all types of numbers that exist in Teams. So you can bring your calling plans, operator connect, or direct routing numbers. So as long as it gets to the Teams tenant somehow, then you go ahead and use that in Nimbus.
And any combination of those and any carriers, isn't it? Because it's coming into Teams first, then Teams routing it.
Yeah, we quite often see, particularly with globals, different regions have got their telephony deployed in different ways based on what they need in the region, and we can absolutely support that. Yeah.
Nice.
Yep, that's correct. As long as it hits Microsoft Teams, we can accept that here via our resource account. So let's copy this in here and click Save and Apply. Again, it will give us the warning message because it still needs to be applied via our provisioning script. Before we do that, we're going to go over to configuration. There's a few things that we could fine-tune here for the service. For now, I'm just going to focus on the workflow. This is basically the document that describes what exactly Teams should be doing with a new incoming call. You can drag and drop all the elements here as you want, and you can even drag new ones in from the left-hand side to fully arrange or build your own workflow to do what exactly you want it to do. In the standard configuration here, this is just a default workflow that always gets created at first. It would just accept the conversation, skip an announcement that is currently grayed out, and then immediately go to the queue where we will then hunt for an available Nimbus user. So that will be any agent that is a member of the team that we've created before. We don't want to do this just the same way. So we're going to create our announcement or activate our announcement and enter some text to speech here. Let's see. Yes. Put in welcome to the Nimbus demo.
And all this config is happening in the Teams client, so we haven't jumped out to another service here. This is part of the experience.
Yes, so this is our Nimbus app fully integrated into the Teams client. basically it renders our web service page. You can also, if you need more screen space for the whole editor here, for example, you could also pop this out and open it as a new browser window as well. So we're gonna save this workflow because we've now added the new announcement. Next up, we're going over to the user settings page because we still have some permissions that need to be applied. These permissions here are optional. They're recommended to improve the experience. So that means that we, as a logged-in user, are able to search for other users internally the same way that we already can search for users using the Teams client. We would now have to be able to search for them on behalf of the Nimbus app or on behalf of the user using the Nimbus app. So we have a few consent permissions here that need to be applied. I'm not going to use my own user account here for this one. Instead, I'm going to sign in with my global admin account because this will give me the option of preemptively consenting to all of these required permissions on behalf of the organization. I'm going to accept this, waiting for the permissions to be applied. All of these permissions, of course, are completely documented here in this page and also in our knowledge base. So if you ever need to review why exactly we need this and what for, then you can always look that up here. And finally, there's one additional admin permission to give us full ability to search the complete user profiles, including the job titles, the departments, and so on and so forth. This can only be granted by a global admin, not by an individual user. So we can just copy this to the clipboard, the consent link, open a new tab, enter this one, and choose our global admin account.
And this is normally where you'd hit that point with a customer, Tom, where you'd probably be going through a change request, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah. Not all customers are going to have a global admin on hand ready to lock you in. But yeah, so you, in a real install, you might be going, like you say, off to a change request, get the global admin to click the box, come back, check it. They haven't clicked the box, ask them to do it again, then they click the box.
Sometimes I feel we're experts in those processes as well. And we can certainly guide customers through that if they need help with documenting it, for example, for the change review board. Yeah.
Nice.
All right. Okay, so we've granted all of the permissions, still waiting for those to be replicated, but this will become green in a few minutes as well. Now over to the provisioning script that I've mentioned before. You can always find the latest download link here. So let's click this one and it will place the latest version of the script in my downloads folder. This is where I'm going to switch over to my PowerShell window. So let me just stop the screen share and start a new one for the PowerShell window here.
And so everything has been pretty GUI so far. The customers that don't know PowerShell, should they be concerned, or how do you help them with it?
We hope not. The script is meant to be interactive. You just run it without any parameters like this, and then it should guide you through all of the required steps and explain what exactly it's trying to do. It needs to be run by a global administrator the first time you're using it. Afterwards, using a global admin is optional, but we always recommend it just to be on the safe side, because the script will need to ensure that all the correct permissions will be applied to our calling bots. We'll get to that point in a few seconds. And also, if you want to use the script to apply, for example, phone system resource account licenses needed for establishing the phone number assignment, then this is also a task that usually can only be performed by a global administrator. But we'll get to this. All right, so running the script now, it's asking us whether we need to use a web proxy to reach the internet. No, in my case, not using one of those. Now the script will load the required PowerShell modules. We need the Azure AD module, Microsoft Teams module, one for the Microsoft authentication libraries, and of course one for Microsoft Online. All of these are required here to perform the various actions that the script will perform on behalf of the user here. So in my case here, I'm still missing some modules, and it will automatically attempt to download these and install them. Let's see if all of that succeeds.
Just while we're waiting for that, it's a good opportunity, Tom, to tell you how we sort of guide customers through this. So our customer success team is really well experienced with everything going on in this script, and customers can book what we call a guided onboarding. So if you're not really comfortable with exactly what's going on in PowerShell and how that all interacts with one another, we basically sit alongside the administrators within the team help them
So
through.
very much like what we're doing now. Someone like Ray
Yeah.
would come along and help walk through the steps. That's awesome.
Absolutely. The only difference really would be that you'd be doing the clicking, Tom, rather than
yeah.
Every customer environment, of course, is different, so there may be various issues or obstacles to overcome here in terms of even getting PowerShell to run or installing the required modules. We see most of the scenarios already, so we cannot usually assist with that.
I'm a nice, simple customer, and it's easy.
Yes. Cheating a little bit here, but all right. Okay, so we've loaded all of the required modules, and now it's asking me to sign in using my global admin account. Next up, it will connect to Azure, to Microsoft Online, then to Microsoft Teams, and finally, it needs to connect to the Nimbus web service. Then the next step here, it's checking for the permissions. If these aren't in place yet, then it will automatically attempt to set them for you using your global admin permissions. So in this case, our calling bot that will be responsible for accepting the calls and managing them needs some permissions here that you can all see listed here, and then also, of course, in our knowledge base. Same for our media bot, if you ever want to use Nimbus for recording voice messages, for example, and these are now all granted. This should be a one-time event only, so now that they're granted, you don't need to run the script again as a global admin to set these one more time. It should already be in the system and should be persistent. Next up, we're fetching the changes that have been accumulated since the last time that the script was run. So we could create multiple teams, provision them in our database, and then finally at the end of the day, just run the script one more time. And it will list all of the changes that have been made and ask you for permissions to execute each required step. So in this case, it has detected we have created a new service, and we need to set up an application instance and thereby also a resource account. So let's confirm this with a yes.
And it's picked those up from your service. You put them earlier in the config, so it's picked those up, and now it's going and creating the resource account and assigning the number. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So we're logged in against the Nimbus web services from which we're retrieving the configuration here on behalf of the user. Okay, so we've created already the resource account. That means right now we could already call the service internally through Microsoft Teams, but now we want to also assign a phone number, and for that to happen, we need first a phone system license. The script gives us various options here. We can use the regular phone system license. We don't recommend this anymore, or at least Microsoft now requires that we're using a phone system virtual user license, which is now also called the Teams phone system resource account license. This should always be our recommendation here. If you're using a manual or a different process for assigning licenses, then you can just indicate this here in the script by choosing M. Otherwise, you can just skip it for now and come back to that point later.
That's like, so that would be like if some other admin owned licensing and they wanted to go and click those buttons.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. If you don't have a global admin at hand, then you can give that task over to them and let the script wait until that has been applied somewhere else before it tries to proceed with the phone number assignment. All right. So let's go with the resource account or virtual user license here. I'm choosing V. And it will also ask us if we want to assign a voice policy or an online voice routing policy. This one is only required if we're using a direct routing number, because if we need to transfer accepted calls over to an external PSTN target, then of course Microsoft Teams will need to know which direct routing SPC will need to be targeted for that. In our case, this doesn't apply because we're using a calling plan number, so we're going to skip this. Okay, so the script is now activating the phone system license. That's done. And next, it will immediately attempt to set a phone number, which will, of course, also immediately fail right away because we've only just applied the phone system license, and Teams always needs a few minutes to realize that this is now fully enabled and available. So our script will automatically pick this up, say, okay, right, didn't work the first time. We're just going to wait for one more minute, see if we can get it to work the next
And this
run.
is the variable where us and everybody in the world has to wait for Office 365 to sync out, don't they? So this, being honest with everybody in the audience, this can take different amounts of time. Office 365 sometimes is really fast, sometimes it takes a while. So I guess just part of the install process, isn't it?
Yes. Usually, based on our experiences, it takes around 5 minutes for the phone system license to be fully applied and then available. But sometimes there may be some other obstacles that need to be fixed manually first. We can assist with that, or otherwise, it's usually just a matter of waiting for Teams to apply everything in the back end.
And is it a challenge for you guys if we've been through various steps so far, if one of these steps doesn't work, or we need to go to a different admin, or we need to check something, like can we start this process?
Yes. So the script will need to basically phone back home at the end of the day when it says, okay, all of the steps that I've wanted to do have been done to this degree. It will report this back so that it gets reflected in our web service. If we interrupt this process here, then of course in our database we will still know, okay, so the phone number hasn't been applied yet. We've got the resource account maybe, but not the phone number. So whenever you rerun the script, it will try to go through those required steps then for you. So you can always start again and then figure out what the obstacles were in the meantime, maybe resolve them before trying again.
And as a customer, I need to run this script whenever I'm adding a new like contact center queue scenario, like a top level one. Is that right?
Exactly, because every service needs its own resource account, and the script is responsible for managing this. So whenever you set up a new service, when you change an existing one, but only if you maybe make changes that are relevant to the resource account, that would be the service name, the service display name, the UPN, or the phone system number that you want to assign to it. So whenever you make changes to that, then you need to run the script again to reflect that on the resource account, or if you want to delete a service, then as well. But otherwise, every other change that we can configure using our web GUI for the workflow that I've shown you
everything else
before,
is down level, isn't it? So once you've got the master number and the Teams resource account or the virtual user set, then the config's on your side, so you can do it in your pretty web GUI.
Yep, makes it much easier. And usually you only want to run the script during provisioning, of course, and then never again.
Well, while we're waiting for that replication to go on, just a quick reminder for those of you in the audience, we do have the Q&A button at the top of the Teams window. We do have a couple of questions floating in already, which I think we'll take towards the end and cover off. But to everybody else in the call, if you've got any questions coming up as you follow along, feel free to slot them in there, and we'll try our best to either answer them on the call today before we finish, and if we can't, then we'll do our best to get back to you after the meeting.
All right. Getting closer to the script, trying it one more time. It still needs to wait for the correct usage location to be applied. Let's see if it works now. It always tries to assign a direct routing phone number, an on-prem phone number first. If Microsoft Teams comes back and tells us, nope, this is not possible because we know that this is a calling plan number, then we try this instead. So this is what we're doing here. Let's see if it works. Nope, still not replicated, still waiting for that.
Let me take one or two of the questions then that we've got in the chat.
Good questions in there
for that replication. Yeah, there is, isn't there? So, really good question from Ian about if there's any Skype for Business infrastructure bridging the Nimbus world into Teams, and very, very easy answer to that one. No. Nimbus is a pure SaaS solution that's built from the ground up for Teams. So it's a full microservice platform with absolutely no Skype for Business parts in there at all. And a little bit later on, I think we can show you a small amount about architecture, because there's also a question about localities and where Nimbus runs. The beauty with Nimbus is that we're only putting the puppet strings in effect. So we're not handling the media. We're not taking the audio of the call across to our data centers. We're really only dealing with signaling, and all of the media is handled in region with the native Teams controls. So you get all those benefits of, the local routing and figuring out where the user versus the caller is. So you get all that out of the box, nice and easy.
And that's quite an important distinction, isn't it? Because there's a lot of certified contact centers, and there are very different architectures. And I guess that question is asking that because there are some architectures that are still relying on Skype for Business and Skype for Business infrastructure in the cloud, and that's not the case here.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, script has successfully assigned the phone number now. So I'm going to stop sharing the PowerShell window and switch back to our browser window. We can still see the clock ticking away. So one more step here. Let's see, on the Teams client again, I'm going to open the personal Nimbus tab, Nimbus app actually. This one is just the service-specific tab. I'm going to use this one here now for my personal view. This is what your end users will be working with most of the time. I can pin this app here as well to make it always available, and then I get a few overview items that are relevant to my daily work. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to review the service settings that we've seen before as well. So now you see all of the warning messages have disappeared. We've got an application ID assigned and reported back by the script. The phone number is properly assigned. And we could click this test call button here to open a new window here, again, in my case for the Teams web app in the browser, where we could already try calling the service internally through Microsoft Teams if we want to do this. So this is now the new resource account directly available. I'm gonna go back to the Nimbus app here instead and take a look at the service dashboard, where we now see that the previous message that we have seen here about the service setup being almost done, it has now disappeared. So the service is fully up and running. Basically, all that's left to do is give it a test call. So whoever wants to do the honors.
Yeah, so I screenshotted the calling plan number we were using, so I can. I've got it in my phone now. If you're ready, and I guess if you want to show that number, I'm happy if anybody else wants to ring it as well. Let's see. But I can't call through that yet. Let's try again.
Might still take a few seconds for Teams
to
fully activate the endpoint. Yeah. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
So, job done. Basically, at this
you can hear that on my mic, but it's coming through. Yeah, there's me ringing in. If we want to flash the number up, if anyone else wants to ring it to show it's real, they're welcome to.
So you can see the incoming calls being listed here in the various states while they're still waiting in the queue or listening to IVR announcements or anything like this, if they're connected to the users. And then, of course, on the right-hand side, you get a full overview of who is a member right now, who's in an available state based on whether they're active in Nimbus and also on their various Teams clients. You can also see here that the Nimbus demo is now reaching out to me because I am the available user. I'm not going to accept this call right now because otherwise I'll get kicked out of the conference session here. But yeah, this is basically it, and service is confirmed to be working. So at this point, we can stop the clock. 23 minutes, new record.
It's pretty impressive. So that's from, considering that, if we went fully against the clock there, sub 25 minutes from no install to first call into the call queue. Super impressive. It's crazy when you think about, I know, but having previously installed server-based products, like it would be like, half a day to set Windows up and get it patched and ready to even install the product.
Yeah, it's a bit of a game changer, particularly for that onboarding process. But actually, we also see really big benefits for customers that maybe are in disaster scenarios. So local governments, for example, can very easily set new lines up to handle local emergencies and front calls off and protect the other staff in there. But even if you're just doing something like a marketing campaign, right? I mean, 20 minutes more in the setup effort for your marketing campaign, and you're bringing the calls directly into the right people. They hear the right announcements, and everything's good to go. It's a real benefit, yeah.
And from an architecture point of view, we touched on it briefly. There was some good questions in the chat there. Like me, the customer, I haven't deployed anything, right? This is 100% run by you as a service. So there was no server here, there was no VMs here, there was no Azure here. It's just you're running it for me.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So I think actually let's let Renee show you around a couple of the UI elements, because I know that a few of the folk might be interested in how the workflow is set up, and then I've got some architecture stuff. We can touch on that real quick because there's plenty of questions about that in the chat as well.
Mm-hmm. So on the general end user interface, you're already seeing the dashboard, of course, giving you some general information about the service. We also have live reporting data here for the service to show us how many calls or tasks we have received during the day, how well they have been handled, what the result was for each one, etc. We can also view user statistics, or for some customers, we can choose to eliminate the personal data here as well and just keep it general. But there's also a much more advanced reporting feature that I'll come to in a few seconds as well. But maybe if we go back to the workflow editor, just to give a few more examples of what we could do here, instead of just playing a plain announcement here and then putting the call into the queue, we could, of course, really rearrange everything here and start, okay, so we're going to accept the conversation, and then we're going to use an input customer element, which is basically an IVR menu prompt. We can use our own resource files. Maybe we've got something pre-recorded already, but most of the time, text-to-speech is pretty great here for that. We're using the neural languages provided to us by Microsoft through the cloud in various languages and even with various accents. It's always funny to use the Swiss German accent here. But yeah, you can basically then just freely define your menu, like press 1 for sales, press 2 for whatever, and then branch off in the workflow. You can define how many inputs you want to accept here, and then you can make some more choices. For example, you can transfer the call over to a different Nimbus service based on the user selection for a different team here. You could target individual users internally through Teams or an external phone number, or even forward the call to a custom parameter. So if you have a dynamic on-call configuration somewhere, then you can use this to make sure that the call always reaches the responsible person.
There's quite a lot of power here, Rene, and like you're obviously going through it quite quickly. You're dragging and dropping meetings. Can we RBAC this down so that only certain people can control certain scenarios or certain queues?
Yes, I've mentioned this in the part before, like the team owners of the team that we've enabled are also Nimbus service owners. And on top of that, we can also use our admin interface to create a whole different organization unit structure. And within that structure, we can assign different admin roles to really control who gets. A lot. Yes. Us as well, that's why we've implemented it. So we can control who gets to see reporting data, who gets to configure workflows, who gets to do specific tasks in the admin portal, and so on and so forth. All right, so there's a lot of flexibility here. You can freely arrange this. You can make it as complex as you need. You can collect information here from your customers, like whole account numbers that they put in. You can make a very dynamic queue that's not just playing one specific waiting music, but you can interject it with specific announcements, and even while they're waiting in the queue, give them more options to maybe control their own waiting experience. Like maybe they want to stay in the queue and just listen to some other music, or they want to instead drop out of the queue and leave a voice message instead. So all of that is possible using all of these advanced functions here. So this is the quick overview of what we can do in the workflow.
Thanks, Rene. It's the difficulty for us at Luware, because we're all quite passionate about this. We could go for days showing everything. I've been accused of doing so myself in the past. So for everybody that's joined us today to see the world record about the installation, we are done with the installation now. As you saw, we stopped the clock. We're going to go and talk about a little bit on architecture. We'll cover off some of the questions, and I know Tom's got some talking points that he'd like to get some more information about as well. So please stick around for the rest of the webinar. We'd love to keep as many of you on, but we are at the half-an-hour mark that we promised we'd do it in, so we won't be offended if you've got other calls to go and jump on. Yeah, thanks for joining so far, and hope you stick with us.
You've done well, Rene. You've taken. I've been watching the webinar numbers, and nobody dropped off through an install. So well done for both chatting and installing at the same time. That's amazing.
I do try.
This is the reporting again in Power BI in this time, right?
Yes, exactly. I just wanted to quickly show this that we've got a lot more specific reporting data sitting in the background, and this is just our Power BI template. It's just a suggestion of how we can visualize all the raw data that we've collected about every call, or even about the user states. We can, in big contact center scenarios, we can track the user activity, see how well the time is utilized, and we can visualize all of this here. This is just a recommendation, or basically best practice here that we've seen from our various customers, but each customer is also free to take this template here and adjust it to suit their own needs. If you don't want to see this particular bit of data, or you want to visualize it some other way, you're free to do so. We've got an open data interface that anyone with the correct permissions can use to download the data that they have or should have access to, and then they can build on that here to visualize all aspects of the service and improve the performance.
Nice. There's some good questions in the chat, everyone. James, I don't know if you want to jump into architecture briefly, because some of the questions around architecture.
Yeah, I was thinking the same actually. So here's a slide I prepared earlier. Here we go. Let's go ahead and get that shared. So for those of you that are sticking it out, I hope you've got an appetite for something slightly more technical. So what we're seeing is a very high level technical overview of our architecture. And what you can see on the left-hand side in the blue section is everything that we run in our cloud. We say our cloud, of course, we really mean Azure. Everything is Azure native with Nimbus. But what I really want to call out on this, not to get into the weeds too much, is look at the green lines versus the blue lines. All right, so in this diagram, the green lines represent the audio paths. The blue lines represent only signaling. And in this case, it's the Microsoft calling APIs in the graph. So this is what constitutes Nimbus being an extend contact center solution versus, for example, a Connect where you would use SIP and SBC interconnects. We don't do any of that. We're not bringing your calls over to us. So your calls are all going to be handled in region inside your tenant, and that's a really strong proposition from a compliance and a data regulation point of view. It makes it nice and simple to satisfy those needs that you've got in different regions. So you'll notice all the green lines stay within the purple box, so everything stays within Teams. I always have to caveat out there is one green line that comes to us, and that is if you choose to use the built-in voicemail functionality. So many customers choose to use that if the queue time overflows and the call hasn't been answered, they like to take a voicemail. And we offer a really robust solution for making sure that that goes to a team and can be handled by more than one person. You can track who handled the call, etc. So that's the only example where the media path comes to us. So yeah, that's a quick overview of the architecture. There is a couple of questions in the chat about some regional stuff. So we have Nimbus clusters based in the UK, in Germany, and in Switzerland. So we're pretty well covered in terms of the data requirements. But we've got customers actually all over the world using Nimbus really successfully, and particularly North America is a growing customer base for us. Coming out of our, Western Europe, I will group them as data centers, and that's really because we're only sending signals, right? So they take milliseconds to transfer across the Atlantic, and they couldn't have any impact on the audio latency anyway.
I guess again, it's easy to kind of prove that as a customer, right? Because they can set up a tenant in 23 minutes and check out how the media goes.
Exactly, yeah, and we do offer a robust set of trials and proof of concepts if you just reach out. So if you like the sound of what you've seen but you're not convinced, give us a chance to convince you. I'm sure we can get you there.
Nice. Jürgen asked a good question. Is it possible to have a test mode for queues so he could change settings, approve it, and then switch to live?
Not today. It's certainly something that we could look at in the future. But at the moment, it's very strictly locked down to RBAC, so you can control it by the user that's logged in. But we do have some exciting stuff in the roadmap where it comes very soon, actually, where you can create templates from the workflows and lock specific sections of the template. So you can sort of have a central standard and just have, for example, the wording of the announcement unlocked so that the local management team can only change the announcements. They can't go and tinker with the routing flow or any of the logic in there.
I guess thinking like an IT pro, you could obviously have a second queue with a second line or even a VoIP only queue, so you could play with configs and queues and work out how it works before changing your live queue config, couldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. And you've seen, I think, today that it's so quick and easy to actually set up a new service. It's not like you're talking of weeks and weeks of setting up a non-productive environment to play with. You can really just throw it together in an hour, figure it out, and then it's also very easy to back out as well.
Rene, you called this, someone in the questions mentioned virtual users in the script need to be renamed. So we've got the true IT pros on the call today.
Yes, I mean, that's great that people are paying attention, and that's exactly correct. The script needs some rewording there, but in the background, it's still the same license type. So it's still listed as virtual user license in the background, but and on the front end, it's now called the resource account license. Yes.
Nice, and we just got a few good presentations. Well done on doing it inside half an hour on the questions. So that was nice. Thanks everybody for attending.
Fantastic. Okay, so it's screen share again. So Tom, I think there was some questions you had about the business value, right, and where we see the customer base going.
Yeah, we've got a couple of minutes, haven't we? So I wanted to kind of say, like obviously this is a mainly tech webinar, but it'd be nice to have a couple of minutes on that exact story, like who actually is using this in the real world, what's the use cases, and Nimbus has a range of options. So what are you seeing real world, James?
Yeah, so it's interesting because being a Swiss company, primarily our existing customer base in what I would say is the before times, the before the cloud times, we're really primarily in the financial services sector. And what we see with Nimbus is because of the ease of use of it, and the speed to deployment, we don't really see a specific market segment where it lands better than others. We really have a massive variety of customers there. Obviously, we do have some good financial services there. So, for example, we have a large insurance company in Central Europe, and they're really seeing a lot of benefit because you can mix and match the license types and really cost optimize the deployment. So in their use case, they have, of course, a main contact center. They need the all singing, all dancing, skill-based routing. But they also have a lot of back office and local teams where they just need to get the call queued up and route them to an agent. They don't necessarily need all of those features. So they're really able to cost optimize and say, well, the back office services, which Renee set up today as an example, they're billed on a per service per month license. So you can have up to 50 agents in there and it's the same cost. Whereas
yeah, I've seen most people go per agent. It's nice that you kind of have this staircase pricing where you can go per service, and also that you guys aren't afraid to mix and match for the right use cases. I've certainly seen in big contact center world, it's always defaults to the most expensive SKU for whatever scenario you need.
Yeah, and I think there's other problems with it, right? It's not just the fact that it's more expensive; it's also more complicated. The concept of, in the case you saw today, which was enterprise routing, it's really easy for the local lines of business to understand and get their head around. If I'm a member of the team, I can take calls. If I'm an owner of the team, I can change the configuration. It's dead simple, nice and straightforward. And these are people that they don't think in the concepts of skill-based routing and responsibility levels on agents and things like that. So it really opens it up to a lot more people that need to serve some needs.
Yeah, and then you can mix and match with obviously people using again native call queues and auto attendant, and just layer your functionality on top where you need it. Exactly.
So yeah, look, I think the challenge that I've got here, Tom, especially with you and Renee in the call, I could certainly carry on for hours and hours. So I think we're probably at the time to wrap up. It's approaching certainly the end of the day.
Yeah, well, congrats on the world record, Renee. All respect to you for doing a live install on a webinar. I don't think many vendors would do that, so I appreciate you putting yourself out there. But I hope everybody found huge value from the session. I thought we got really good numbers, and encourage you to reach out to James, Renee, and the rest of the team if you want to do it yourself or learn more or dig into the weeds. I can certainly vouch for Renee in terms of some technical questions I've thrown at him, and the detail he comes back with has been great.
And if anyone wants to beat my world record, go ahead, be my guest.
We might be starting something here.
Yeah. So that's awesome. Thanks to both of you for joining us, and thanks to everyone that came along to watch and for all the great questions. If you want to see more about what we're doing, then you can hit the link in the top left for all of our upcoming events and webinars. We've got some really cool ones coming up, so go and check that out for sure. And if you do want to reach out, you want to get a demo or start some quotes or just understand more about the product, you can subscribe to our news and events in the bottom right hand side there. And we hope to see you soon. Thanks for joining.